I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it,
Good afternoon. It's Sunday, January 28th, 2024, 3 p.m., and we are here to play another episode of Dear Holmes. We're watching Co-op for Two, by the way. I have the letter in front of me. It's a new case we're about to be starting called the Yuletide Cipher. In the channel, it's been asked, are we caught up or behind? This is the current case, according to the mail I've received at least. But we're 3 letters behind, which means we can play this full case. They haven't sent out the solution yet that I know of. And that's a good position to be in, so that we don't find ourselves waiting for a delayed letter. We've got enough to play through for the next 3 weeks. YouTube says 15 concurrent viewers, 4 likes. If you do like this content, I hope you will subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. Okay, what should we talk about before we get started today? Not too much to talk about. I did post a rankings video for all 8 Cryptic Killers games that we finally played through. Last week we played through the last one that was for us, not the last one in their sequence, but the last one that we had remaining outstanding to play, which was Murder at Magic Mirror Casino. Quite good. I posted my rankings of all 8 games, along with some general advice about playing the series. I do think it's one of the more consistently good series, and 8 different boxes you can get. Doesn't really come in a box, comes in an envelope, but there's lots of reasons to recommend Cryptic Killers. It's affordable. There's 8 of them. They're very high quality. They have a tiny bit of internet usage that just adds some variety, but most of the time you're working on written documents. It's really maybe is become now my go-to recommendation, and it's got a nice variety of difficulty levels. Okay, so there's that, and I think in the next week we'll be playing some more sessions here. I'm not sure what, but probably with very little notice. So if you want to join us for random streams, you might want to make sure however you have to do it on YouTube to get notified when there's a new video. And I think on the 2nd of February, in a few days, we may play another experimental case for High and Low. That's the game I've been working on. I've got a hard deadline of February 11th to submit it to the local game contest. A couple of people on our Discord have been working on games, and we've got one that's almost ready to play. And I've just started working on another one to try to demonstrate some of the features and use my new tool to produce the storybooks. I hope to have that finished by February 6th or so. And at that point, I have to decide what to do in terms of if we can play it on the channel. I've been toying with the idea of sort of reading it, being a moderator here on the channel, but I'd have to just read it and let the audience make choices. That seems like it would probably be an unpleasant thing to sit through, but we may try it. And one of the authors of the game we're going to play on February 2nd has dropped by, Rocky Helton. Okay, so I'm very curious to see what that's looked like, and Logan has been working on art, so we've got some art, and Rob has been helping with doing some mock-up photographs, so lots of exciting things on that front. But let's rewind and get back to Dear Holmes. So we wrapped up the previous case. I quite enjoyed it. I'm not sure how it would rank compared to the others we've played. We're going to have to start keeping track. But close to the top for me. I think not my favorite, but fun. This one promises to be a cipher, which you'll remember when they moved to the 3-letter version 2 of Dear Holmes, they promised more puzzles and ciphers. So maybe that's what we're going to be seeing here. All right, let's check in with the chat before we get started and see if there's anything else anyone wants to talk about, any projects anyone's working on. Teresa finished playing her Titanic mystery game. Says it was pretty good. Anything else? My wife brought back a Japanese-only game, cold case game, that I'm quite curious about playing. We'll have to play it with her. I don't know if we'll play it live on the channel. That's not really her thing, but it's possible that we will record a playthrough of it. All right, well, if there's nothing else, let's get started here. All right, 3 letters. I'm starting out with the letter from Watson. Joji Anderson says, and you can let me know what is that name from? Is it one of these Swiss, Nordic languages, Belgium, whatever? Came back from friends playing Case 1 from Carlton House. Carlton House is one of the, is it behind me? No, it's one of the Space Cowboys boxes that got reprinted from the original Sherlock Holmes consulting detective cases. And Carlton House is the Mansion Murders reprint. So you've got a big mansion and places like that. I haven't played it yet. Swedish, yes. Okay. I was just talking to someone on the channel who was commenting on the Dennis Wheatley dossiers we played from the 1930s and remembering that we still have one of those outstanding. Not a Dennis Wheatley book, but a 1930s American series that we're saving for a special occasion. All right, let us read our case here. 22 December 1900. Esteemed detective, amidst the festive change in season, I write to you with a matter of considerable gravity. Our associate, Inspector G. Lestrade, in a rare acknowledgment of the labyrinthian nature of his work, has called on Holmes, who is presently investigating an anomalous sighting in the heart of Africa. As Holmes must remain in proximity of the Congo River, the responsibility to help falls upon my shoulders, yet the complexity of this puzzle has led me to seek assistance beyond the confines of Baker Street. Your prowess in unraveling mysteries is well known to us at 221B, and it is in this regard that I extend a plea for your expertise. Lestrade is facing 2 curious, potentially interconnected cases, the kernel of which was an odd occurrence 2 days ago, 20 December. In a nutshell, a telegraphist stumbled upon a cryptic message that she felt should be appraised by an official authority. Upon further inspection, her supervisor had the communique brought to the attention of Scotland Yard, and Lestrade, exercising due caution, has linked it to a separate predicament involving a criminal apprehended for burglary, Alden O'Flaherty. The thief claims knowledge of a conspiracy threatening the crown itself, and while skepticism often greets the words of the incarcerated, Lestrade believes there is more than mere fancy to O'Flaherty's claims. After reading his missive to Holmes, I am inclined to agree. If you will assist, then first review Lestrade's reports. I will transcribe his first letter for you after signing this, my own, and will enclose the other alongside. Once you have acquainted yourself with O'Flaherty's testimony and the odd telegrams, I beseech you to consider the following questions. 1. What messages, if any, are these telegrams concealing? 2. Who is responsible for the telegrams, and are they all being dispatched by the same person? 3. Does the Queen's safety truly hang in the balance, ensnared by unseen threats? If not, then is there any credence to be given to O'Flaherty's foreboding statements? When I receive additional information, you will be informed without delay. Until then, your thoughts on these queries, or a solution indeed, would be received with gratitude, be it by post or wire. Anything sent to our American associates at the following address will be transmitted to Baker Street in an instant. For his part, Holmes shall cast an eye over this puzzle on his return in approximately 4 weeks. He will then no doubt take pleasure in sharing with you his own postulations. Nevertheless, know that it is your immediate impressions and theories that will be crucial in guiding us, for the fog enshrouding these events is thick and woefully lacking in merriment. I trust in your swift and discreet engagement. With my highest regards, John H. Watson. See below for Inspector Lestrade's initial report. Okay, so we've got our first case that feels like it's a weighty case. Most of our cases are like, the house has got a burglary. This is the Queen could be in danger. So I guess we got to take this one a little more seriously. Okay, so here's the letter from Lestrade, I guess, writing to Holmes on the 21st of December, day before it's being sent to us. Dear Mr. Holmes, I'm sorry to be calling on you as the holidays approach, although from our past dealings, I know you are the person on earth least likely to allow your routine to be disrupted, be it by the seasons or not. I have 2 matters to draw to your attention, which may or may not be connected. I suspect that if they are connected, then they are of such an importance that Scotland Yard will require your help to investigate them. But even if they are not related, then your interest is likely to be piqued. The first matter regards a recently arrested burglar, Alden O'Flaherty. He is part of a gang of criminals whose specialty is fencing popular seasonal items. Generally speaking, they will break into well-supplied shops, steal the items in question, and fence them at Christmas markets this time of year. We caught O'Flaherty breaking into a toy shop, Folly's Fantastical Toys, in Tottenham Court Road 2 days ago, although the rest of his gang escaped. A gentleman reported the crime near 10 in the evening. He rushed from his flat, which is across from the shop, towards the Russell Hotel, hoping he might run into a constable on patrol. He did not. But the hotel's valet assisted him in contacting the police. And in the man's words, I heard a loud shattering sound, then another. And some chaps started shouting all excited like. When I looked out, I could see 3 or 4 of them working their way into Folly's. They were going in through a broken window near the front door. I could hear them arguing from my flat. Couldn't believe my eyes. This is Lestrade continuing. 3 of our men arrived as the lot of thieves tossed sacks of merchandise into their carriage and made their escape. We estimate that 8 men, all masked, were involved in executing the robbery. Or rather, there were 8 criminals we witnessed that night. The constables who arrived noted that there were 2 men passing sacks up to another 2 who were already in the carriage. Those 4 were joined by another person who was seen running from the shop alongside O'Flaherty and another unknown individual. Our men managed to apprehend O'Flaherty because he fell while running away. The other 2 he was with sacrificed their loot to facilitate their flight. Scotland Yard has been aware of similar incidents, all of which occurred in the same area of London in the last 4 weeks. Grimsby and Sons, the Magic Lantern, and Bramwell's, all of which advertised themselves as toy boutiques, were broken into, and we suspect that this boisterous group is responsible in all 3 cases. As such, we took more pains than we normally would in interrogating the man we captured, who had not committed a violent crime. O'Flaherty has resided in London for several years, he says, though he was born in Dublin. Drawing from our tedious, if not insufferable, exchange of words, I would describe him as unintelligent, unreliable, and uneducated. His interrogation yielded no information leading to his associates or any of their plans. But at the heights of his ranting, he intimated that he knew of a conspiracy to assassinate Her Majesty, Queen Victoria. I took his bait for the sake of diligence, and as expected, he was tight-lipped once questioned. Any of my inquiries regarding this supposed plot were met with some form or another of, "I have said too much already," and "It's my neck on the line, really, not yours. Holmes, you well know that on something as vague as this, I would not be writing to you. We receive word of such plots frequently, and suffice it to say, there is seldom any substance to them. Our assumption was that O'Flaherty aims to waste our time, or at best, dissuade us from seeking evidence against him for other crimes. However, there was an incident in the small hours of this morning which suggests that something indeed may be afoot. The incident I refer to was more so a discovery made by a dutiful operator at the Trafalgar Square telegraph office. As you will know, the telegraph office on the corner of Trafalgar Square by Pall Mall is one of few that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is no surprise that it grows painfully busy when popular holidays, such as the first day of Christmas, are on the horizon. Thus, there is a special deposit box where messages and money can be left securely, to be transmitted on behalf of customers as clerks find time throughout the day. Yesterday afternoon, a strange message was discovered in that box, and it drew the attention of a telegraphist. So much so that the Trafalgar Square telegraph office forwarded the message to us. The telegram was directed to the telegraph office in Boston, in the United States, to the attention of a Mr. Ronan O'Malley. I will set it out below before saying anything more. And here is the message. The text is broken into spaces, which suggest some sort of code involving substitution, wherein one letter might stand for another. Yet even this is uncertain, and the work I have done leads me but in circles. Operating under the assumption that XX signifies a full stop, and ZZ could denote emphasis, I have observed that the first word would consist of 5 letters, 2 of which are repeated as its third and fourth characters. 5 letters, the first word 5 letters, if XX is a full stop. Okay, we'll come back to this. He's just saying the double T's here, I guess. Bearing O'Flaherty's remarks in mind, this is consistent with that word being queen. So Queen, if it's just a simple substitution cipher. That's what Lestrade has figured out. You can bet if Lestrade has figured out, it's not going to be the right answer. And the T serving as a substitute for the letter E, for instance. But if the letter T should be read as an E, then I am at a loss as to what the following word might be. The only words I have identified, beginning with 2 consecutive letter E's, are associated with eel, as in the aquatic creature, and any associated words, and eerie, as in something auteur. Neither of these seem likely subjects of a clandestine message. I have considered words in Welsh and Irish Gaelic, but have come upon nothing significant in doing so. After obsessing over the message for the entirety of this morning, there were but a pair of facts upon which my men and I agree. 1. That the message appears to have been written on December 20th at 1:12 hours, 1 a.m. And 2, that the carolers stationed outside of Scotland Yard are exhausting all of our patience. Thus, my preference is to state that we have taken scrutiny of this coded text as far as we can for the moment. In truth, I appear to be one of few remaining concerned with it. It is my hope that you may be able to see further than I on this matter, Holmes, and provide clarity before we no longer have the luxury of time. Please tell me if I should heed O'Flaherty's warnings, or if I should, as most of my colleagues have, dismiss them as fiction. Until I've heard from you or learned of any developments involving the burglary or this telegram, I will focus my attention on O'Flaherty, our only link to the thieves who struck at Follies. At the very least, I intend to ascertain whether or not they were in fact the same scoundrels who robbed the 3 shops I previously named. And with luck, I will learn more about this supposed plot against Her Majesty and how this blasted telegram is germane to this all. I remain yours truly, G. Lestrade. P.S. To ensure you are informed of this immediately, I am dispatching this note by messenger for personal delivery. And I will do the same for any subsequent missives I send you. Okay, and then we've got our last letter here from 10 Craven Terrace, Paddington. Telegrams, Paddington Station. Dear Mr. Holmes, I have written to you once today already about what appeared to be a coded telegram sent from the Trafalgar Square Telegraph Office. Who's writing this to us? Oh, Lestrade again. Not 2 hours after I had dispatched that letter, I was made aware of another similar telegram, again left at the Trafalgar Square office. It seems we have some idea of its sender. As the telegraph office's drop box had become quite full last night, the staff chose to seal it off this morning until processing all the messages accumulated within it. Due to this, people have been unable to use the drop box since 7:30 this morning, and have had to hand all messages to staff inside the office. Although the telegraphist who alerted us to the first message was not present at the time, a different operator recalled hearing of the curious telegram and informed their supervisor of this new one upon reviewing it. The telegraphist did not think to delay the sender's departure, and by the time they were informed of the telegram's potential importance, the person who had delivered it was out of sight. We have no way of knowing if he was using this telegram's author, if he was this telegram's author, or its mere messenger, but the message was addressed to the same Ronan O'Malley as the first telegram, so in that regard they are connected. Furthermore, we now possess several details concerning the one person we can directly connect to the telegram. The first and possibly most significant is their name, Tadig. When read aloud, one would say Tai or perhaps Hij or Taj, as in tiger without its last letter. The reason for which we know the man's name, and only his given name, I should add, is a fortuitous one too. According to the clerk who interacted with him, Mr. Tig did not reveal his own name, claiming that it would suffice for his recipient to know that the telegram was sent from Trafalgar Square. Rather, his name came to light upon describing the man to other staff and asking if they had seen him leaving the office. Somebody recognized him, claiming that they have seen him on more than one occasion enjoying an ale at the Silver Cross in Whitehall. Miss Clara Wilson of the Trafalgar Square office recalled, "The burly man, yes, I've seen him at the Silver Cross the past couple of weeks. Thick accent, and he fancies any lady willing to humor him. I know his name because he likes to use its curious spelling as a way of introducing himself. Oi, I'm Tig, and I wager you can't spell my name." He'll say all sweet, walking up to you with a smirk, and well, you can imagine the rest. Drawing from Miss Wilson's statement, as well as others' descriptions, we know, too, that this Tig man has a noticeable Irish accent, and that he has been in London for, at minimum, 3 or 4 weeks. If we adhere to Miss Wilson and Company's recollections of the man, he is of average height, not notably tall, with slick, surprisingly neat brown hair. As for the telegram itself, I will set it out for you here. Okay, and we see the strange same patterns of X's and Z's. Double X, double Z. I confess that reading this telegram has only led to a greater sense of confusion when considering the first one. Unless the messages are in a foreign language or have been coded, and then coded again once more, then it is more likely that the code being used is of greater sophistication than a simple substitution of letters. This makes it difficult to imagine someone like O'Flaherty involved. But even the most simple-minded fellow can learn how to encode a message given the proper instruction. I will continue to work on decrypting these messages and will write to you if any other message or matter pertinent to this case arises. I shall question O'Flaherty about Tige in due time, but I must approach my inquiries with caution. I wish to avoid revealing to him how much or how little knowledge we currently possess, and know that as I determine a course of action, one of my men will be paying a visit to the Silver Cross, whilst another assumes a post near the Trafalgar Square telegraph office. Should we catch but a whiff of this Tige, we will make every effort to locate him. Any response will be awaited with the greatest interest. G. Lestrade. Okay, so we have got a serious case in front of us. Quite intriguing. Quite serious. Okay, before we deal with the ciphers, this may be our most significant, or feels like our most significant serious case we've got. All right, so before we look at the ciphers, I want to make sure we get our timeline down, especially whether the ciphers were sent before this guy was arrested. So all right, let's go to the start of this case. 22 December, Watson is writing to us. Okay. Here are the questions we have to answer. What are the messages about? Who's sending them? Is the Queen in danger? All right, that's fine. I want to get timeline information though. Two matters could be connected. A recently arrested burglar, Alden O'Flaherty. Okay, so we get the details of his arrest. He's part of a gang. There were 8 of them. They seem to be breaking into shops, stealing, and reselling. They've got big sacks of stuff, so doesn't feel like there's anything deeper going on than they're robbing these stores, and they're robbing a bunch of them. Okay. They catch him 2 days ago, right? So that would be December 19. The rest of the gang escapes. They chase them down. We get a description of the crime. But I think this is the important part. 2 days ago, December 19, he's caught. No sign that he's the ringleader or anything like that. They were all running away. He trips and they catch him. And then similar robberies in the last 4 weeks. So throughout all of December, these robberies are happening. Okay. They interview him. He says, I know of a conspiracy to assassinate Her Majesty, which sounds like what you would say to get out of jail. So it sounds like he's just bullshitting. And Lestrade agrees. He doesn't take it very seriously. But then let me see. Let me just make, he's resided in London for years, born in Dublin. Okay. He interviews him. He doesn't say exactly when he interviews him, but probably that night on the 21st. Okay, he says there's a conspiracy. And let's see, what does he say about it? I've said too much. It's my neck on the line. Okay, so he won't give us any details, but he sounds like he's lying. And then he says, I would normally just write it off, but there was this weird telegram. Okay, and he says, Trafalgar Square picked up a telegraph being dropped in a drop box. Yesterday afternoon, a strange message. So this is important because it means it happened after this guy was caught, right? So that's the part that's important for me. If he's arrested on the 19th and then the 20th is when the coded telegrams get sent, then we could be dealing with someone who's doing a planned operation to make it look like he's telling the truth. This could be their plan. Like if any of us get caught, claim there's an attack on the Queen and start sending these coded messages. If the coded messages were sent before they were caught, then you might doubt that. Okay, but it would be hard to imagine that you'd get caught, that this would be picked up. So probably this is not planted. Okay, and it's going to Boston, which is very strange. And it's going to Ronan O'Malley. It would be nice to have an address to look at that, but maybe you can't afford to bring in cops just because of a suspicious message. So, okay. And then is this an acronym for something? We don't know. Then we've got our first message. We know, we can see the date here is December 20th at 1 a.m. That just means it was probably dropped in box on the 19th, probably, right? And they only got to it at 1 a.m., maybe. Okay, then he has his own theories of what the code might be. We'll look at the code in a second. And he says, well, I might guess if you think this is an attack on the Queen, then he might be saying Queen here, Queen. And then he says, but that makes the T's E's. And if you follow that through, it starts to look like, what crazy word could that be? He points out he could be using a foreign language like Irish, but then God help us. Okay, then he says that the message appears to be written at 1:12. I guess he's not saying it was dropped off the night before. It was written at that time, 1 a.m. That's a little odd. Who writes a message at 1 a.m. and drops it off? But okay. Then see below. So maybe they think it was actually written then. Okay, anyway, then he says, whoops, I just sent that off, and then I came across another message. This next message, we've got a person who sent it called Taj, who's got a weird background name. Irish? We don't know. We might want to study that to see what is the background of his name. That might give us some clue if this is an Irish gang or something. Addressed to the same person. On the 21st. They recognized him drinking at the Silver Cross in Whitehall. And he's a ladies' man. Here's the second message. We've got a physical description We know that this guy has been here for 3 or 4 weeks. Our other guy was there for years, right? No? Yes, 4 weeks they've been robbing. So is this guy part of this gang that's robbing places? But our guy, Alden O'Flaherty, we believe he's been in town for several years, residing in London for several years. This guy has been in town for maybe 4 weeks, just during the robberies, perhaps. Same code. Okay, so is the code a message about the robberies to someone in Boston? Boston has a big Irish population. So it very well might be, if you had to guess, that this telegram was sent after our guy was caught and is not about the Queen, but is about this guy that got caught. If that's the case, you might expect to catch his name in the code. O'Flaherty or Alden, Aldon, Aldo, okay, not doubles there. Or O'Flaherty. All right, so if we spend a little time on this code, just a quick glance at it. I don't know how much time we're going to spend today. I do note that ZZs end the messages. So maybe if you had to guess, the ZZ was a period, a full stop. Could this be a period, and then a letter, and then a period? And could this be a period here and a period here? So breaking up into sentences would make, but then what would the period be here? This could be like a Mr. MR. If this is a period, then this is almost certainly like an MR. But then you'd have RR. A second question is, why are in this letter, every capital letter has a space? I guess we've got one here. Okay, so, but what's, oh, that's our double Z. Period. If this is a period, and I was right about Mr. Period, that would be a problem because then you'd have a word period RR. That doesn't work. Even if it was miss, you wouldn't start a word with a double S. All right, well, let's, before we spend too much time on this code, and I'm not sure how much time we want to spend on it today, be nice to make a scan of this so we can write an experiment. Let's just talk about this case a little bit amongst ourselves, about the background. Any thoughts? Okay. George Anderson says Yuletide might be the English spelling for the Nordic Yuletide, Christmas time. Yes, Yuletide is, I don't know the exact definition of Yuletide, but it's used for the Christmas time. Rob says, why on earth would those telegrams be related to the toy burglars story about an assassination attempt on the Queen? Seems far-fetched. Joja is just pointing out what we were saying before, that he's been in town for 4 weeks, the Thai guy, right when the robberies were taking place. Emmy says, did it say he's got connections to Dublin? When did the Irish Republican movement start? Would they target the royal family during Holmes's time? Emmy says, how many double letter words are there anyway? Could there be a double Caesar ship? The first letter and the second one another. Well, it's a very, actually, it's an interesting, it's a nice perception here that these things look like they're in pairs. I don't want to write on this because I want to have a pristine copy when we make a copy of it. But I think you've got a very good point that we're dealing with pairs. And I wonder if we've got like an interleave message, like the R, the T, the P, the T, the T goes with the E, like it's that way. Rather than it being R-E-T-T, the message, but every other letter belonging to one set. And you can see how clear it is in pairs because of this. Like here, the ZZ is the first item of the pair and the A is the second item. And here, the ZZ is the second. But then look at what's happening here. Here we have no second pair for this. What would that suggest? I guess it doesn't suggest much else. Probably the message, if you were going to read it that way, would be every other letter. When you get to the end, you cycle back. So if you were to write this out, it would be R, T, P, T, E, and so on. First letter of each pair. Then you end at T, and then you cycle back and go E and do the second set. E, T, X, T, E, and so on. However, that would make this Z, if we think this is a punctuation, a full stop, that would make that the second letter of the entire message, I, period. That's troublesome. Could the time mean something? Well, that's a very clever perception because look at this one here. Okay, that's a very clever observation by Isara. Isara says, look, don't take this the way I did it. When I read this, I said, this is what the telegraph office has time-stamped. But Lestrade says, no, I'm looking at the message here. This is the entirety of the message that was delivered. And he says, well, it appears to be written on 12/20. That checks out. At 1:12 a.m. Okay. Now look at this message, though. The second message says 2:12 a.m. That feels suspicious. Like, if that's part of the message, is this instructions on how to decode? Is it a 1 Caesar shift and a 12 Caesar shift? A 2 and a 12? Is that what we're looking at? SUQ. That seems unlikely if it's a positive Caesar shift. I'm just trying our thing where we do every other letter increase by 1. That doesn't work. But if you subtract by 1, that becomes a Q. That becomes an S. Oh, that doesn't seem right either. That's very tempting to think that these are not times, but are instructions on decoding. 2:12. What have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18. What about here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18 plus 2. Broken up again into 9 rows of 9 pairs. But this one is a longer message than this one. Emmy says, didn't they say it was a Dropbox that these messages were left in? So why would it have a time on there in the first place? Well, it's not 100% clear how to interpret this date and time on here, but he is assuming they appear to be written on 2/12 at 1:12 hours. I think from this statement, we can assume that the telegrams are this entire block, and that this is part of the telegram. This is part of the telegram. This is getting transmitted. This has not been added by the telegraph office. So when the telegram gets received by Ronan O'Malley, he sees this whole thing. He sees this date and time. They're assuming that the writer has put the current date and time, but that's not necessarily the case. The dates look like they're correct, but the times seem suspicious. In fact, this one didn't go in the Dropbox. This one had to get handed to an officer. Do we have the time information? We're told they closed the... Okay, let's see. Look at this. Unable to use the box since 7:30 this morning. Had to hand message over. Okay. So we're not told exactly when someone actually had to walk into the office. We're told they're open 24 hours a day. But this does feel like... Yeah, look. 7:30 this morning, the Dropbox has been closed. So this message went out sometime between 7:30 a.m. and the evening time that he's writing this letter. That means this is not the time it was being sent. This makes this very suspicious. I think that's a good catch. A very good catch. If this was being written and dropped off at 2:12 a.m., then the Dropbox would have still been available. It only becomes unavailable at 7:30. So I think that's further evidence that this is part of our code. 1.2.12, 1.12. They both have a 12. One's got a 1. So you could imagine it could be all kinds of things. So it could be like message 1 of 12, message 2 of 12. It could be sequentially numbering the messages. It could be part of a key for decoding. I think this XXE and EXX lends credence to the idea that these are pairs, because otherwise you'd have if we think the X's are like word breaks, you'd have a word break and then a 2-letter word and then a word break. Not impossible, but it is impossible to have a word break and a 2-letter that's the same letter and then another word break. I don't think there's any 2-letter word that's just the same letter twice. So I think this adds credence to the idea that these are all pairs that are interleaved. suppose if we wanted to write it out, it might be easier to make copies. We're not going to spend hours on this now. People can come into this. If you're interested in talking about this more, you can visit the Discord after this stream. But let's just write it out a little bit. Message. It's going to be message 1. This is going to be message 2. So if we interleave it, what have we got? R, T, P, T, E, T, T, and we've got our X, X, and then E. Boy, that almost looks like English. All right. And then our next line would be a P, A, G, I, A. Then we've got our double Z, then R, G, T. And that's it for our first message. Okay, and then then if we were to continue it on the next line, on the next part of the pair, the second half, we get E, T, X, X, T, E, P, R, P, R, E, X, X. And then part 2 would be E, I, P, T, A, A, A. Wow, 3 A's. And R and Z. This is troubling. Let me make sure I've done that right. Why did I get triple A's? Because I'm doing the second pair here. This A, and this A. That seems problematic for our theory. So if we're thinking it's interleaved, then we're basically reading the message from left to right and then continuing down here. With the Z being a sentence end. And the X is being maybe word breaks. That gives us a very long word here with the triple A. And a one word sentence. No, sorry, a 2-word sentence. Ending with a double letter. That doesn't seem quite right. And then the theory about what plain text you might expect to find in this note. Lestrade thinks they might be referencing the Queen, whereas I think they might be mentioning O'Flaherty. Let me just get his name spelled out. Flaherty. An odd. That's 5 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. a 9 or 10 letter word, depending on if you include punctuation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's possible that the messages 1 and 2 are meant to go together. That this isn't even 2 separate messages, but one message that you combine. But then how would you combine this third row that we have no third row for? Any other observations about differences between these two? Otherwise, they look to be the same idea, right? They're still paired letters. There's still 9 pairs per row. They're still using XX and ZZ as some sort of breaks. Let's see. They speculate about Gaelic in the letter, a red herring, or is this something we need to consider? Lady Berwin says, just getting into this game with Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Baker Street Irregulars. Any recommendations for next Consulting Detective box or what to play next? The Baker Street Irregulars is, in my opinion, the best box. So enjoy your time with that one. Maybe after you finish that, you could back up and play the first box, the Thames Murders. But enjoy your time with the Baker Street Irregulars, because I do think that is the most solid box. Okay. These letters look a little bit close to English to me. They're a little bit concerned. Let's see. Let's just make sure there's no other weirdness going on. P-E-E-T, like you can't read it down. Let's just check out our little Caesar cipher possibilities. If we've split it up now, interleaved it, and we've got 112 and 212, let's just look at a 12 shift to see what that would look like. R goes to D, F, that's not right. And if we did a 1 shift, we get S, U, Q, S. That doesn't work. Just thinking out loud here a little bit, I think it's useful to talk about constraints and possibilities. So you might look at something like this, right, and say, well, how do we know the message is going left to right, then top to bottom? Like, how do we know we should be reading it this way? How do we know we're not reading it down like this, for example? I do think that this gives us a clue to that, though. This is the kind of extra bit you would expect in a letter written left to right. Like they're filling up this space, then they're writing this part, and then they run out. If you were writing it this way, you would expect to see it filled in all 3 rows until the end. So I do think we're looking at a message read left to right. I do think that this here is our clue that it's interleaved rather than a break, break. That just seems unnatural. I don't think there's any word that fits in there that's a double letter word on its own, unless I'm wrong about that. Maybe someone can correct me. Is there a double letter word that's just 2 letters long? I don't think so. So I like our interleaved idea. The fact that this looks so much like English is a little bit suspicious to me. It almost makes me want to do the same thing for this message here and see if these messages don't combine somehow. Let's just do this way. S, Z, Z, U, A, E, T, X, X, A, E. So I'm doing every other letter here in the pair. And the next row we have a T, T, D, A, X, X, T, T, E, T. And then we have T and our double Z's. And now we're doing every other letter here. So we have A, S, I, X, X, A, U, W, S, W, I, S. Then second pair on the second line, T, C, Z, A, P, S, A, S, L, and E, double Z. All right, and if the double Z's are periods, which is not for certain at all, just a hypothesis. And then if the X are breaks, guess we could mark these as breaks too. This message 1, this is message 2. Anything jump out? I'm troubled by how much these seem like letters in real words. Like this feels like you could anagram this to a word. Epagia feels like you could anagram it to a word. RGTET feels like you could anagram it to a word. TEPRE feels like you could anagram it. This one you might have a harder time, but I feel like you could. Here you have a little bit of a harder time because you've got an S here right from the start all by itself. So that doesn't quite work. TTETT, I guess you're not going to anagram that to a word. But boy, it almost feels like these are letters you could use. Pairs of letters. Have we considered a Polybius square? So in a Polybius square, you're right, it's pairs. That would make you think it might be something like a Polybius square where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the letters of the alphabet in it. J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So that each pair gives you a coordinate. The problem here, though, is that these pairs, they look like they're full range pairs, so that each coordinate is from 1 to 26, right? How many different letters do we have here? If we only had 10 different letters, then you could imagine like it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and then each pair gives us a unique coordinate. But we've got ranges of letters, A's, E's, T's, P's, G's. Although there is lots of repeating, it's true. Anyway, you would have to have a different way to index into this. It is interesting to, well, here's another problem. Some of these pairs are AA. So that, if you did it that way, then you have to have the same coordinates on the X and the Y. Then you can only have 5 different letters. And surely we've got more than 5 different letters, right? A's, S, U, I, E, T, L, P, D. So we've got too many. We've got a coordinate system that doesn't work well for a Polybius square. I love the idea that this 212 is a key to this. But I'm also open to the idea that these messages go together. If you were to try to think about a substitution cipher, you've got a lot of T's. T, 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 T. And it's the same on the second letter. However, here's an interesting point. Like, look at remember, this is the interleaving, right? So these are the odd letters of each pair, and this is the even letters. Look at the different distribution of letters. On the tops, it's all T's and E's, or not E's, it's all T's. T is so common on the odd of the pair. But then look at the lower pairs. Now there's barely a T. So if you were doing common letter, you might guess that the T's are E's for the top parts. And when I say top parts, I mean the odd numbers, the S, the Z, the U, the A, the E, S, Z, U, A, E, T. So the odd interleaves. The odd interleaves are full of T's as the common letter. The even are not like that anymore. But then if we think the X is a word break, we'd need a word that ends in a double E. It's not impossible, but it's odd. If we were Caesar shifting that, what would that be from a T to an E? I guess that would be a 13 13 shift? A 0 shift. Or is it a 12 shift? No, it's a 13 shift. Well, here's another point to think about. Look at this for a second. T, T, E, T, T, E, T, E, T, T, E, T, T, E. And then in our second message, T, T, E, T. Like, why are we seeing this common T, T, E, T, E, T, E, T, T, E? That's very odd. So let me make another observation. Wow, E's and T's like crazy over here. So here's another observation. I've already talked about how the odd pairs seem very different than the even pairs in both messages. Another thing that seems dramatic is how similar the letters are here and here. In our two messages, our odd letters are so similar. Now, what does that suggest to you? What it suggests to me is that you might think these are two different codes, two different ways of doing the substitution. And maybe this 212 is telling us the key to use, like, for example, the Caesar cipher to use. And this 112 is the Caesar shift to use there. But the fact that these two messages are so heavily dominated by the same exact letters, these T's and the E's, suggests to me that they're not using a different code. And then here we've got all these A's. Let me just see something. 3 A's here. 4 A's here. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this sort of suggests to me that they're using the same frequency of letters would mean the same basic code. This troubles me greatly. Triple letter, that just seems wrong. let's think about the idea that each pair is one letter. Is there reason to believe that's not the case? Yes. What evidence is there that each pair does not form a letter? If you're counting every other letter, then your second message should be is wrong. Okay, let me fix my second letter then. ASIXAUWIS. Okay, and the next row is XTZAPSASLEZ. Okay, that seems right to me. Instead of SUAT. Oh, you're saying this one I did wrong? No. This is the top, the odd numbers. This is the even pair. AS. Okay. No, I'm disagreeing with Mark. Mark, you're confusing me, or I'm doing it wrong and missing it. But if someone thinks I've transcribed it wrong, please try to explain it a little better. The top of each note is the odd pair. Remember, a ZZ is a single item. So SZUAETXXAE. That's correct here. And in the second row, it's ASI. Okay, so this looks right to me. Someone can correct in the channel if you agree that I've done something wrong. So now where was I? I had a point to make, and I've forgotten it. Oh, that's a shame. Does anyone remember what was I starting to say about a constraint here? I can't remember what I was trying to say. Oh, pairs. You might guess that each pair of letters is decoding to a single plain text letter. So the S and the A combine to form one letter. For example, if it's a Polybius square. I think what tells us that's unlikely are these pairs with the double lowercase. To me, that seems very unlikely that you would combine the double lowercase with a letter to get another letter. Those feel much more like punctuations or breaks of some sort. Let me zoom out so we can see this a little better. So taking a step back, the way that we've experienced the Dear Holmes games as a general rule is that it doesn't expect everyone to crack this code on the first letter. The subsequent letters are going to give us more clues about this. But it may be sufficient for us to break it. And there may be some chat in our Discord about this after the episode between this week and next week. Next week, we will, of course, read the next letter. So if you are interested in working on this, have some ideas for it, you can come into the Discord for this channel, the Co-op for Two Discord. There's a link on the About page of the YouTube channel, and there'll be people talking about it. We have some people who are pretty good at these kinds of ciphers that may be working on it. Do be careful about posting the answer, especially if you've already played and seen more letters. Don't just post the answer. There's a channel for the current game, and you could post it in spoilers for those. Some of us will want to keep on working on it. We won't want to know the answer, but it'll be interesting to discuss it. So I think probably we'll wrap this up here, although I wouldn't mind sitting with this for a little bit longer. Putting this in digital form so that in a grid where we could experiment with this might be a little bit easier. I'm troubled by the commonality here. We've got a string of T's and E's that seems unnaturally long. And it's in both messages. So I've been really drawn to this top parts, meaning the odd, every other odd. But this bottom triple A is feels very wrong. And we're getting that triple A up here. A, and A. And we're certainly not sure that we should be breaking it up into the odds and then the evens. Why did we like that idea? This is one reason why, because it felt like word break, word break is unnatural, whereas we solve that if we interleave. If we interleave, it feels a little bit like we get more natural word breaks, although this is problematic. The fact that that would make the second letter here as a word break or a sentence break. What on earth could that be? That's like a single letter sentence. That does not seem right. And the reason we think the Z's are the stops is because both messages ends with a double Z. The other possibility, of course, is that the X aren't word breaks at all, but are sort of messages to change coding systems. If the T's are E's, because they're so common, wow, that's just crazy. What's happening with all these T's? I guess this would be it's very odd how the odds and the evens have such different frequencies. We've got one T on the evens and all T's on the odds here in this second message. That's very strange. I think that does lend credence to the idea that these are interleaved, that this is interleaved, that the odds have a different pattern than the evens. If this is a message, another way to attack it is to think about the plain text. If this was a message sent after the arrest, you might imagine that the message might contain a bunch of information like police, the name of the guy who got caught, the name of the guy who left the message, TADHG. They might mention the place where they got arrested. What were we told the place where they were arrested? Foley's Fantastical Toys. Rob says, if disease denotes sentence ends like a period, then there's just two in the first message. Yeah, there's one there, and then there's one at the very end. And in the second message, we've got one right here, one here, one here, and one here. Yeah, this is hard to make it be a sentence break. Then this would be a one-word sentence and a one-letter sentence. If these were coordinates, let me just count how many different letters we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different letters here. Here, and then down here, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that right? That there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different letters. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different letters. What about here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. 6 different letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters. Is this something we should be concerned about? To the attention of? Does that mean it's not addressed to Ronan O'Malley, but addressed somewhere to the attention of? If so, then that could be a key. I noticed, remember we were saying like MR period RONAN. 112, 212. 112, 212. T went to E. That's a shift of an 11. C, E, A, E, P, E, E, A. Hard to make a word out of that. So if we don't do every other letter, then we don't have this triple A problem, but we do have a double A period and then an ARA. That's better. Then we have this weird double letter problem here. Double E's. So if we split, if we interweave, we've got a triple A problem. And if we don't interweave, we've got a double E problem. Hmm. Our problematic areas are this S by itself if we interleave S period or S whatever break this is. Unless it's continuing from a previous message, but even if it was continuing from a previous, even if it was continuing from a previous message, doesn't the previous message end with the Z? Is it possible the Z's are the word breaks? Not really. That's too long a word this way. Well, what about his original theory? His original theory is that this was Queen, Queen. And then what if the X says shift to the next kind of cipher? That's why he doesn't like the idea that this is EE. But it's odd that this would be one cipher and a different cipher that also has T's and E's as the most popular. They don't look like the ciphers changing. At least not between here and here. And these T's and E's, there's too many T's and E's. Something's wrong with that. Too suspicious. Why are there so many T's? Anything from the chat? We've been here an hour and 40 minutes. Most of the viewers have left. Emmy says, I think there are only 12 different letters total between the two messages. Doesn't seem enough. Well, that's a good point. Why are there so few messages? And why are there so few letters being used here? Let's write out all the different letters there are. R, C, P, E. I've got X, X, Z, Z, P, A, G, I, A, R, G, T, okay. E, R. Then we've got a D. Then we've got an S, a U, A, S, I, A, U, W, S, T, A, P, S, A, S, L. Do we have an L yet? I've got one L at one message. Okay, oops. So I count, including the X's and the Z's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 letters. Sorry, I counted P twice. R, T. Anything else I counted twice? Okay. So 12 letters plus the XX and the ZZ. Is that what you would expect if you had a substitution cipher this short? It would be very common not to have any Z's, X's. Guess this is the kind of stuff that you might want to automate, but you could count the frequencies here. It does seem like it's a little short that you would expect to see. You're basically only seeing a third of the letters of the alphabet with two short messages. Is that what you would expect? Is that what you would expect to see a third of the letters in two short messages? Seems a little low, but maybe not crazy. You might be able to pick out, if you analyze the pairs, that might give you another clue. Like if you assume that each pair was a letter, then you've got two double T's and that's it. That's probably too low for the most common letter. Like if you, again, this is more evidence that it's not pairs of letters representing one letter, because then your most frequent pair would be this TT, and there'd only be two of them in the entire message. That's not good enough for English. Your most common pair would have to happen more, it would have to be the E, and it would have to be more frequent. So I think it's further proof that we're not dealing with pairs representing a single letter in plain text. But that doesn't tell us about the interleaving. If we put this in digitally, we could certainly run Caesar Cipher brute force to make sure there was no Caesar Cipher going on, or automate that. What else would you do if you put this in digitally? And I guess you could try a generic substitution cipher algorithm to try to do a generic substitution, an arbitrary substitution cipher if it was interleaved, and assuming these are the same codes. Really feels like part of the mystery has to be to figure out how this can make sense, the triple A's, or this S by itself with a Z makes sense, or this up here, XXEEXX would make sense. How do you make sense of that? Is there anything ZZ could be other than a message break? And if the ZZ is a message break, what is this 6-letter word here? ARAGRT. ARA. Well, I guess that depends on whether we think it's interleaved. It's not interleaved, it's AAR. All right. Well, why don't we stop here? If you have ideas for this, you want to work on it, talk about it. If you find the solution, come join us on the Discord. Don't cheat if you've already gotten the letters ahead of this one, because we have got, they are out. We just haven't read it yet. And don't just blurt out the solution, but you can come in the Discord and say, hey, I figured out something, who wants to hear it, etc. Or just wait until next week and we'll see if we get more information on the next letter. We'll see how it goes. This is pretty intriguing. Don't normally love ciphers, but I like the fact that this is backed up with this little bit of a puzzle here about, is this related to the thieves? Is it related to the assassination of the queen? I have my doubts. I'll see you next week and we'll figure it out.